Greetings from San Diego, California. This interactive multinational teleconference is reaching you live in English and Spanish through a unique and complex international telecommunications network via satellite, microwave, and cable. This program brings together distinguished institutions representing education, business, and government in more than a dozen countries in the Americas and Europe. We look forward to hearing from you. During this video conference, we will look at how to maximize value by creating a synchronized organization and optimal resource management. This is the second International Training Center video conference of the year 2003 series entitled Strategies for Competitive Performance. I'm Dr. Farhad Saba, Professor of Educational Technology at San Diego State University and the moderator of today's program. There is a number of prerequisites to starting an organization or community of interest along the path of synchronization. Synchronization is an increasingly important strategic concept. It involves achieving full harmony between an organization's internal managerial and productive practices and its external marketing and development efforts. This is why the organization remains compatible with today's global environment. A disposition towards change at both the individual and organizational levels is crucial in moving toward the implementation of the process of synchronization. This disposition requires a new mentality or perspective that includes commitment to action and adaptation. Competence in optimal resource management is the key to full implementation and continuous maintenance of an effective synchronization program. An effective program includes overlapping strategies that involve monitoring, adaptation, and assessment of human, technical, financial, and political assets. The practical result of all of this is the maximization of value of our efforts and achievements. This innovative video conference will discuss the mechanisms and techniques for implementing this new organizational strategy, a strategy which will be increasingly essential to organizations in the educational, business, and government sectors. As our society evolves from the so-called New World economy into a New World productive system, the strategies and techniques of synchronization will be more critical. Key to the concept of world productive system is that in order to be successful at all levels, both organizational and personal, we must possess human, technology, and knowledge competencies. These competencies are already having an impact on the way we all work, live, and interact. We have invited a well-recognized speaker today who will propose an implementation methodology for organizational synchronization. This methodology is equivalent to a roadmap for maximizing our potential for productive success and global competitiveness. He will provide insights and will illustrate competency development and shared action. We are very fortunate to have with us Dr. Stephen Goldstein. Dr. Stephen L. Goldstein is nationally recognized as a leading trends forecaster and analyst. He speaks to businesses, governmental groups, and other organizations on the trends shaping the future. Dr. Goldstein is a producer and host of a number of television shows, among them We the People, a public affairs show, and Teen Talk, an original series of interviews. From 1998 to 2001, he was the executive producer and host of The Business Exchange, a national award-winning half-hour weekly television program produced and broadcast by WLRN Public Television in South Florida. Dr. Goldstein is the author of You Can't Go Wrong by Doing It Right, 50 Principles for Running a Successful Business, the practical guide to educational advertising and marketing, and in 30 days to successful fundraising. He is also a special correspondent to the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, in which his editorial column appears bi-weekly. His columns have been published in major national newspapers as well. Dr. Goldstein earned his bachelor's, master's, and Ph.D. from Columbia University. Welcome back, and thank you for being with us today. Let me begin with asking a question. Would you say that the need to synchronize our organizations is now greater than ever before?
As you might suspect, the short answer to that question is yes. And the longer answer, slightly longer, is yes, because of two realities that organizations face today, more so than ever before. The first is globalization. As you mentioned in your introduction, every organization, no matter how big or small, increasingly becomes globalized, even if it doesn't want to be. It just has to be. The second reality is networking, which is the result of technology. Everything from computers to communications technologies. So the fact that today organizations can internally network and automatically become networked outside creates the reality of what synchronization is all about. Synchronization is a concept. The networked organization is, in fact, the paradigm in which organizations operate. And that's what people will find in the modules today. You will see exactly what you face internally and externally at bringing these two concepts together.
Thank you, and let's begin with Module 1.
Today, I'd like to talk with you about a simple, obvious, and crucial concept in organizational success. It is so simple, so obvious, and so crucial, hardly anybody recognizes or follows it. That shouldn't surprise you, however. Most people look for exotic and complicated ways to make their organizations work, so they don't recognize obvious ones that are right in front of them. The crucial, obvious concept I'm going to talk about is called synchronization. That's a long word. It may sound like something complicated, but it isn't. Synchronization is the process of linking events and actions so they occur at the same time or in a predetermined sequence. It goes on everywhere around us. It's so pervasive that most of us take synchronization for granted. It is such an obvious necessity to bring things together to make them work that we are not even aware of it. And yet, you couldn't move your body normally, let alone walk from place to place, if your internal and external organs weren't synchronized, unless your brain and your legs and arms were synchronized. You couldn't drive a car unless the steps in the process of starting it, from turning the ignition to igniting the fuel, were synchronized. You couldn't enjoy a movie if the soundtrack and the picture weren't synchronized. The words spoken by the actors and their actions wouldn't make any sense. You couldn't listen to a concert if the musicians playing wasn't synchronized, unless, of course, you like listening to noise. You wouldn't be able to dance to the music of any group that didn't play in sync. You and your partner wouldn't be able to dance unless you were in sync with each other and your movements were synchronized with the music, or you'd look foolish. And at some time, you've probably said to someone you were planning to meet at a certain time for a very important reason, "Let's meet at noon, so let's synchronize our watches. I have 10 minutes after 9. Synchronizing was an indication that you wanted to be absolutely positive that both of you got to the same place at the same time because you started at exactly the same time. Well, I'm guessing that by now you would agree with my opening statement that synchronization is a simple, obvious, and crucial concept which makes everything work, and that it is so pervasive and so obvious we take it for granted. But you may be asking, what does synchronization have to do with running successful organizations? The answer is everything. Successful organizations are those that are the most synchronized. Weak or failing organizations are those that are not. It is as simple as that. Most organizations fail or are not as successful as they could be because they do not remain synchronized, even if they started out synchronized. You can see it everywhere, from AOL Time Warner to the Chrysler Corporation of years ago, even to the fall of the Roman Empire. In one way or another, all of them were overtaken by outside forces because they were no longer able to control or be synchronized with them. Typically, organizations are created because someone or a group of people first saw a need for a certain service or product, then found some people to help them create and deliver the product or service, then built an organization around continuing to deliver the product or service. In their early stages, organizations are generally highly synchronized with the world outside of them. They are almost totally outer directed. Unfortunately, most often, at some point after a few years, the young organization that was synchronized with its outside environment usually begins to take on a life of its own. Eventually, perpetuating the organization becomes as important as serving the people it initially set out to reach. In extreme cases, perpetuating the organization becomes even more important than serving its clients or patrons. Executives and managers appear only to want to protect their turf. They want to amass power within the organization. In other words, over time, most organizations move from being outer-directed to inner-directed. They get out of touch. They stop being synchronized with the source of their success, the people outside of them. It is a natural, however unfortunate, evolution. The seeds of an organization's failure are directly related to its becoming less and less synchronized with the world outside of it. So, the question we're going to answer today is, how can an organization become and remain synchronized? It's a fundamental question and an enormous challenge. It's at the core of every organization's success or failure. I'll give you a hint. The overall process is made up of two parts. Synchronization begins by working from the outside in. In other words, first, an organization has to look outside itself to see how it needs to synchronize itself. Then, it needs to shape or reshape itself internally to serve those outside needs. In this first part of our discussion today, we'll talk about synchronizing with the outside world. In our second segment, we'll talk about synchronizing the inside of any organization to achieve the perfect fit. Please have a piece of paper and something with which you can write. I'm going to pose a few questions and ask you to rate your organization or one you know based upon some important criteria. In order to synchronize itself with the outside world, all organizations must develop 5 different synchronization assessment tools, and they must use them continuously. The first synchronization assessment tool you need to develop is a client satisfaction survey. It will give you important information about how to fine-tune your existing programs and services or develop altogether new ones. For example, suppose you run a health clinic that is now open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. Through your survey, your current clients may tell you that you need to change or expand your hours or even the days of the week that you are open. They can tell you whether your staff is serving their needs properly, whether your waiting lists for service are too long, and whether you are meeting their expectations across the board based upon any number of criteria. Such an assessment can be done at virtually no cost or at very low cost to you. And yet, what you learn from your client satisfaction survey will be invaluable to you. Here's the first question for you to answer. How well does your organization, or one you know, assess its current client's satisfaction with it? Give it from 0 to as many as 10 points if it's really good. The second synchronization survey you need to develop is a client needs assessment. Narrow in scope, it should be easy to conduct. It should aim at determining the need for new products and services for the people you currently serve. Your clients or customers will be able to tell you a wealth of information to keep your organization relevant, vital, even profitable. Suppose you started your clinic primarily to serve the needs of women and their infants. Suppose you've even fulfilled your mission very well for a number of years. Well, you may not have noticed it, but your clients' infants have grown up and now have different needs. So now, the clients you originally served may tell you that their infants are now young children, even teenagers. But your health services and related services have not expanded to meet their needs. If you've developed a client needs assessment as part of your ongoing effort to synchronize your organization, you'll begin to see a trend or trends emerging. And you'll conceivably be in a position to open up new programs and services that you might otherwise have overlooked. Once again, you can obtain such valuable information at little or no cost to you. Here's the second question for you. How well does your organization, or one you know, assess its current clients' needs? Rate it from 0 to as many as 10 points if it's really good. The third synchronization assessment tool you need to develop is a population needs assessment. With this assessment instrument, you are trying to determine the need for services you can deliver, but focusing on people you do not now serve, but whom you conceivably could. Before you even think of developing your own survey project, look for research studies that have already been done. There is no reason to reinvent the wheel. This kind of assessment is much broader than those you will do with your existing clients. You will need to take a variety of approaches to conducting your population needs assessment, from written surveys to telephone surveys to focus groups with representative samplings of the potential groups of people you want to identify. Here's question number 3. How well does your organization, or one you know, survey the needs of people it does not now serve, but whom it could? Again, score it 0 to a maximum of 10. The fourth synchronization survey you need to develop is a competition assessment survey. Next to knowing the needs of the people you serve or might serve, the most important information you can gather is how other organizations are serving them or are not serving them. Such data and information are more readily available than you might think. You'll want to begin by collecting all of the marketing and promotional information that other organizations produce. Study their advertising. From that, you will no doubt discover the full range of their services, the fees they charge, where they offer their services. In fact, you'll find almost everything you'll need to determine whether it is cost-effective and reasonable for you to compete with them. One thing you will not be able easily to determine is how financially viable their programs are, how many people they serve, and other proprietary or private information. For that, you may have to research public records or do a bit of on-the-spot investigation yourself. For example, if you are an educational institution wanting to offer programs, say, in computer science in a certain city, you might want to visit the campuses of other schools offering similar courses of study to see just how many students are enrolled and what kind of facilities they actually have. Question number 4. How well does your organization, or one you know, survey the competition? Again, give it a 0 to a maximum of 10 if it's really good. The fifth and final synchronization assessment tool you need to develop is a trends assessment. All human beings at some time want to know what the future will look like. But, as we all know, we can't know absolutely for certain. Still, we can make educated predictions based upon the best information we can get. So with this assessment tool, you and your organization will be able to look at the big picture, the broad trends, current and emerging, that will shape your future. For one thing, you will need to learn to distinguish between 3 types of trends. First,